Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me on A Psychologist Looks at Scripture. I'm Peter Doherty, a Catholic priest and a psychologist, and I'm pleased that you can join me. In this podcast, I draw from my background in psychology and scripture studies to provide fresh insights into the Gospels. The human sciences and spirituality are more connected than people realized. Healthy spirituality has its roots in healthy psychological functioning. On the other hand, spirituality enriches our psychological functioning. The Gospels were written over 2,000 years ago, but the core teachings remain appropriate today. We are consistently invited to deepen our faith, find new wisdom, and grow spiritually when we reflect on the Gospels. There is always something more to discover. I know you're busy, so my podcasts are short and to the point. If you have time and you're interested, please check out the earlier episodes listed on the podcast website and on YouTube. Today's podcast focuses on the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 1 to 12. This Gospel will be announced in churches on February the 1st, 2026. In the podcast today, we are introduced to a segment of the teachings of Jesus known as the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes give us insight into the mind of Jesus. There is some debate about what Jesus actually meant, but let's look more closely. The Beatitudes are also found in Luke's Gospel, with some differences. For example, the first Beatitude, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Luke's Gospel, "in the spirit," is not there. Although we have examples of Jesus spending time with the wealthy, Jesus did, however, have a distinct focus on the poor. It seems the poor were not just financially poor, but include those who were poor in power, who often did not have the means to protect themselves and their own interests. Those were often victims of the more powerful. It seems that Jesus held those in power to a higher standard, as indeed they should be. He challenged the powerful to be responsible and rather to exercise their power as a form of service. The quote, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely," originally came from John Delbert Acton, also known as Lord Acton, in a letter to Bishop Mandel Creighton on April 5, 1887. Acton argued that unchecked power leads to moral corruption, influencing modern political thought. An overdeveloped sense of power can damage psychological health by reducing empathy, increasing isolation, and fostering cynicism. While spirituality, it may lead to corruption through detachment from the higher values or divine accountability. Luke chapter 14, verse 7 to 11 gives us examples of how Jesus saw power. "For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." In Matthew chapter 20, verse 25 to 28, Jesus calls his disciples aside after the dispute over greatness, explaining that Gentile rulers lord it over others, but his followers, the greatest, must serve. He models this as the Son of Man, who came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. From Mark chapter 10, verse 42 to 45, and also Luke chapter 22, verse 24 to 27, power shifts brain function, prioritizing goals over social connections, and eroding circuits, which heightens stress and paranoia for the powerful. Research has shown powerful individuals often attribute others' actions cynically, objectify subordinates, and overestimate their control, leading to poorer decisions and relational strain. Lower status power exasperates corruption as it amplifies internal biases without social checks. I encourage my listeners to check out the website Lifestyle Sustainability for further information. Unchecked power promotes spiritual corruption by fostering self-satisfaction, moral blindness, and disconnection from a higher power of grace. An obsession with dominance signals absent spiritual intelligence, prioritizing personal control over ethical or religious beliefs. This echoes Lord Acton's warning, where power erodes humility and vigilance against sin. I encourage my listeners to check out the Center for Contemplative Practice website for more information. Jesus teaches us that true power lies in becoming the servant of all. directly rebuking ambitions for the higher positions, like sitting at his left or right. Jesus calls the 12 disciples together after James and John request seats at his right and left in glory. We see this in Mark chapter 10, verse 35 to 41. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave to all. The second beatitude is, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. At first glance, this beatitude seems out of place. How is grieving of value or significant for the development of one's spirituality? We only grieve for people that we have loved or meant much to us. One can go through their life very superficially and do not have to mourn or experience the sting of the loss of someone they loved. They stay on the surface of life, rarely investing in relationships. In some cases, they have experienced the pain of loss and believe that they are unable to love again. Grief is painful, but it is a sign that we are alive and live deeply. You don't get over grief. You learn to live with it, to be grateful for the times you were together. You will experience the grief on anniversaries and on special moments, but can still live your life fully. Grief processing often leads to greater life appreciation, stronger relationships, and personal strength, with 30 to 70% of bereaved individuals reporting such growth. Grief promotes identity transformation, self-efficacy, and new perspectives. Practices like mindfulness during grief boost prefrontal cortex activity, improving decision-making and resilience. I encourage my listeners to check out Jovita Tan's and colleagues' 2021 research, The Experience of Grief and Personal Growth in University Students, a qualitative study, available on the website of the National Library of Medicine. The third beatitude is, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Meekness is often seen as being weak. Jesus is not talking about weakness here, but rather a refusal to push one's agenda by force. Meekness is seen as gentleness and humility. Meekness is the ability to choose restraint instead of revenge. It is the ability to absorb criticism without retaliation, foregoing status or control and trusting in God. We often associate meekness with weakness or passivity. However, in the Bible, meekness is associated with controlled strength. One of the saddest observations I have is watching a good person respond by retaliating against someone's poor behavior. It's sad because despite their values, they are willing to model their behavior after someone who has hurt them. While understandable, they have not grown in their spiritual lives. Do your actions flow from your values, or are they a reaction to the behavior of others? The fourth beatitude is, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Of all the beatitudes, I see this one as the most likely to lead to one's pain. Speaking your truth to power, doing the right thing, despite being tempted to cut corners, and never being satisfied until everyone is treated justly, will take its toll on you. Are you prepared to leave your comfort zone and be involved? Being hungry and thirsting for righteousness is powerful terms. This beatitude is not an intellectual decision, but a visceral response, a profound feeling on the issue. Specifically, this means being informed on the issues and having a willingness to respond. Boycotting products and spending your valuable time to understand the issues and not be satisfied with pat answers. Sometimes it won't be easy, as there are many false narratives out there. The fourth beatitude is the commitment to listen, to seek, to understand the complex issues, and if necessary, make difficult choices in your lifestyle. The fifth beatitude, blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Being merciful to another is akin to acts of compassion, forgiveness, and kindness. Offers substantial psychological benefits by reducing stress and enhancing emotional well-being. Longitudinal studies confirm that these effects persist over time. Increase in mercy-like behaviors are linked to lower perceived stress and fewer mental health symptoms. According to an article published by the Mayo Clinic, those who practice acts of kindness have been shown to increase self-esteem, empathy, and compassion, and improve mood. It can decrease blood pressure and cortisol, a hormone directly correlated to stress levels. Kindness can increase your sense of connectivity with others, decrease loneliness, combat low mood, and improve relationships. It can also be contagious, encouraging others to join in with their own generous deeds. Mercy serves as a cornerstone of spiritual growth across religious traditions by mirroring divine compassion and fostering intimacy with God. It transforms spiritual relationships, promotes forgiveness, and invites divine graces like protection and healing. This beatitude shows that merciful acts have a reciprocal divine favor. Spiritual works of mercy, such as forgiving offenses and comforting the afflicted, reflect God's mercy to the one showing mercy. Practicing mercy breaks down the feelings of resentment, heals emotional wounds, and cultivates joy, peace, and heroic virtue in advance of spiritual stages. It enhances prayer sincerity, relational harmony, and resilience amid trials and enriching daily life. The sixth beatitude, "Blessed are the pure of heart, for they will see God," means more than just being free from sin and blameless. It means having a singleness of heart towards God, a desire to please God. It's more than just actions, but reflect a purity of soul. We have many examples of Jesus calling us to go beyond the minimum, and this beatitude is no exception. The beatitude talks about more than an avoidance of sin, but making choices for good. Purity aligns with mindfulness practices that build self-control, clarity, and resilience against negative experiences, helping individuals respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. This reduces ruminating on past mistakes or issues, improves focus, and enhances relationships through greater empathy and reduced hostility. Key characteristics include honesty without hidden agendas, where thoughts, words, and actions align authentically, building trust and self-groundedness. Humility and gratitude prevent ego inflation, while accountability, owning mistakes and making amends, demonstrates emotional maturity. I encourage you to check out the website by Nyla Usler. She also has practical suggestions on focusing on the purity of heart. The seventh beatitude, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God," is not surprising. Peace is not an absence of conflict. Jesus was often the source of conflict when he challenged people's erroneous beliefs. Being a peacemaker requires active listening skills. A person who feels they are being listened to is more likely to trust and move towards resolution of the conflict. Peacemakers need empathy and humility to be effective. By acknowledging the emotional needs of those in conflict and being humble enough to recognize personal limitations and avoid being defensive can bring about peace. Self-control and gentleness, strength under restraint, help peacemakers stay focused and work with truth, even though through tough conversations. The sense of fairness can help bring about reconciliation. The eighth beatitude seems more like a warning about being persecuted. "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Living the Beatitudes will lead us more into conflict than living superficially. While living the Beatitudes is good both psychologically and spiritually, they demand commitment to live spiritually and authentically. You will need personal strength, maturity, and conviction. Don't expect your friends or even family to always understand or agree with your faith life choices. You will be misunderstood, judged unfairly, but you will be living deeply with greater freedom and authenticity. Thank you for joining me today. Next Sunday, February the 8th, 2026, I'll be sharing a new podcast episode from Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 to 16, where we will hear about what our role as followers of Christ is. If you are new here, I invite you to check out previous episodes on major podcast platforms or on YouTube. And for my regular YouTube listeners, please consider subscribing and sharing the podcast with friends who love Scripture. I also invite YouTube listeners to post in the comments section where you're from. I appreciate knowing where my listeners are from. And I'd like to do a special shout out to my listeners in the UK, the United Kingdom. Thank you for joining me. New episodes come out every Sunday, focusing on the week's gospel. Your feedback and questions are always valued and helps our community grow. A big thank you to Heather Patel Doherty and Richard Coulombe for their insightful help in preparing each episode. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me at peter.doherty, that's DOHERTYOMI, @gmail.com. May God richly bless you all.